Hello, good people. Happy Tuesday, Fire Fam. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Burn It Down with Kim Brown. This is the safe space where we set oppression ablaze because, God damn it, guess what? We good at making fires. And you know what? There's a lot of things out here that is just begging us to burn it. I mean, at this point, damn near daring us to burn it down. Because the world is moving very mad. We find ourselves ensconced in madness. But I want you guys to understand that this is a place where like-minded folks can talk about all the goings-ons in the world, in the community, and know that you are not crazy out here, guys. No, you are not crazy. You know why? Because we are in this craziness, in this madness all together. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in live. Shout out to everyone that is checking us out here in the U of the tubes. Who we got in here? I saw Cheryl Lawrence checking in early. I got my good bruv, Vesper X, Monty Nile is in here, Cassie Radicles. Oh, okay, hold on. DMV came out, Baltimore came out. Oh, you guys must have seen the topic of the day. Maybe you saw some beef happening on Twitter. We will get to all that in just a moment, but please do me a favor. Please hit like on the video. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to Burn It Down with Kim Brown and follow us places around the internet. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok and Twitch. Northern Witch has been getting busy for us over there on Twitch at BIDWKB. Super easy to find. And even if you wanted to support the channel, you could easily do so. Patreon.com/BIDWKB, or you can run us some super chats, which is cool. PayPal.me/BIDWKB, Cash App $BIDWKB, and Venmo at BIDWKB as well. Okay, guys, so here's the thing. I was prepared to come in here and report some news. Actually, specifically, which we probably maybe will do on our later in this week's show or maybe even next Tuesday's show. But I wanted to do a whole show about how Black women specifically are targets of police violence and victims of police violence. But hold on, there was some waywardness happening on Twitter. Let me set this up for you guys really quick, because let me tell you how the things transpired. Tunde, if you could please pop up A1 for me. So, as you all know, on the Remix Morning Show on Black Power Media, we have had weekly discussions about the HBO limited run series We Own This City, produced by The Wire creator David Simon, right? And a lot of people had issues with the series itself for a variety of reasons. Easily argued that it was another shiny piece of cop propaganda from Mr. Simon. But where people really took umbrage had to do with the ending. And it had to do with HBO's and David Simon's depiction of the death of Baltimore homicide detective Sean Suitor. Sean Suitor was killed back in 2017. And after a lengthy investigation, which, by the way, including the entire locking down, cordoning off of a Black Baltimore neighborhood by Baltimore police, so much so that these residents sued the Baltimore Police Department for infringing upon their constitutional and civil rights. It was martial law declared in Harlem Park when the Baltimore police were allegedly looking for Sean Suitor's killer. But it turned out, after an investigation from a so-called independent review board, and we'll get into the independence of this review board momentarily, but the findings of the independent review board found that Detective Sean Suitor committed suicide. And this tweet was from Sean Suitor's attorney, and his name is Jeremy Elridge. And Mr. Elridge was tweeting about the conclusion of We Own This City. And this is what he said, quote, "The fact that David Simon at AO Despair relied on erroneous written IRB, Independent Review Board report, to substantiate this defamatory portrayal of my friend and client Sean Suitor's death is simply laughable. It makes me sad that HBO could embed actors with cops, but they couldn't talk to me. They couldn't talk to me, Sean's wife, or Sean's family." And then if you could pop up A2 for me, Tunde. This is what David Simon's reply was. And this was part of a thread. And if you are not blocked by David Simon, perhaps you could go back and read the entire thread. But David Simon's reply to Sean Suitor's attorney went as such. It says, your client took his own life in advance of his grand jury testimony. He had been informed that by investigators, that while he was not a target, he would likely lose his job as a result of the revelations forthcoming. This is regrettable. It is also entirely true. And when I saw that tweet, I was a little bit taken aback at the way that, number one, David Simon, who did not deny that he never spoke to Sean Suitor's attorney or never spoke to Sean Suitor's family before concluding himself that the detective took his life. But lots of people in Baltimore do not believe this, guys. It reminds me very much of at the height of the crack epidemic. Black people in communities across this country said the government is bringing this crack into our communities, and people gaslit them, thought that they was crazy. Why would the CIA distribute drugs? Oh, why not? Why not? And it just goes to show a true lack of imagination from the perspective of white moderates, white liberals, the same white moderates and liberals that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X warned us about. Don't trust them, okay? Because they are only your ally up into the extent that their whiteness ends and your blackness begins. But for David Simon, if you could pop up A3. So David Simon quote tweeted me, guys, and it took me for idiot, as Kalechi Okafor would say. He took me for idiot, called me an idiot. Called me an idiot. But here's the thing. I didn't even give a fuck that he called me an idiot. It was the fact that he called me an idiot and then immediately blocked me. So I didn't even see the fact that he had called me an idiot until way, way after the fact. So I'm going to get to David Simon's seeming issue with women, particularly women who dare to challenge his version of events when it comes to the death of Sean Suitor. But let's get to the death of Sean Suitor and why David Simon is more than likely very wrong about this. I'd like to welcome to the show a person who is an outstanding independent journalist and writer, who is also a supporter and a patron of this show, and who has been following the murder investigation, which was very lengthy, into Sean Suitor's, determined by the medical examiner to be a homicide. You guys get them flame emojis up, y'all. Join me in welcoming Miss Justine Barron to Burn It Down with Kim Brown. Hello, Justine. Hello.
Hey. Hi.
Hi. I'm so appreciative that you were able to make some time today. And we have a lot to get through here, Justine, because this case is extremely complex. It's layered. There are differing theories that are competing, despite the official determination that was presented by the police and the Independent Review Board, the IRB. But before we get into all that, I would love for you to just set up for the folks, for the people, about how long you have been following this case, the kind of research that you've done, and what is your connection to following this news story, because it kept changing really from the day that it happened.
Yes. So I was in Baltimore and this happened. And there was like suspicious information within a few days. Police said he stepped out of a car and was shot. Police said he knocked on doors and was shot. It was all over the place, right? And it wasn't just me at first. There were like 4 or 5 of us, independent journalists and investigators, like kind of gathering information. And we started with the dispatch audio because that was broadcast. And, the radio scanner picks up calls, and it picked up a number of calls from this case. And so early on, I sort of reported on the dispatch. A lot of things stood out to me that were curious and strange, but one of the first things that still 4 years later, however many years later, nobody will report, is that the dispatcher, Bomenka called 911, which they show.
Wait, hold
in
on.
that
Tell people
show.
who Bomenka is, because tell people who
Bomenka
Bomenka
was
is.
Suitor's partner that day. So they were driving around when Suitor was shot, and they were like staking out this lot, supposedly. So
David Bomenka.
Bomenka's 911 call has never been released, but the dispatcher relayed it and said, we have a signal 13 officer down. He won't give his name. He won't give any information. And he says he's off duty. And that like immediately contradicted what the police were telling us, was that he was, on duty that day. Bomenka was on duty that day, just didn't have his radio. So already, we don't know exactly what Bomenka said to the dispatcher, but I was like, well, that's a lead and that's interesting. And from there, I just started to like follow the press conferences and follow the stories that were being told. And they were spinning so wildly in every direction. And especially about the evidence supposedly that he was shot with his own weapon. And so we saw like this journey from the commissioner at the time, Davis, insisting that someone like grabbed his gun and shot him inside the vacant lot, to then they were sort of pushing this suicide theory, and that he like ran into the lot and fired a couple to make it seem like he was shot, but then shot himself. And it wasn't just that it like sounded outrageously preposterous, but you could also see, I was picking up on the way the story was being told. And it reminded me so much of the work I did on Freddie Gray, where he came up with this rough ride story to bury evidence of police abuse. I've talked to your audience about that a bit. So for some of us, we had institutional memory, same people giving these press conferences. It was like, oh, this suicide theory sounds like the new rough ride.
Well, hold on, Justine, but before you go further, hold on. I want us to play a clip. It's going to be A5 Tunde, because I want to sort of put into perspective for our viewers how intense it was in Baltimore when Sean Suitor was murdered, because the initial police narrative was there was a cop killer on the loose, right? And the police were treating it as if there was a cop killer on the loose. And you guys can infer what all that could mean in terms of the intensity of what Baltimore City residents must have been experiencing. So I want us to take a look at I think this is the first day coverage of when Detective Sean Suitor was murdered, or it was the day after. But this is from WJZ TV, and this obviously became a national news story. There was hundreds of thousands of dollars put up in reward money. So this had a lot of attention. So just to jog people's memory in case they weren't here or they don't recall, let's take a look at WJZ's TV's coverage of when Detective Sean Suitor was initially found shot.
Mary, the area blocked off is smaller, but police have maintained around-the-clock presence here. The governor called this a cruel and senseless crime and authorized the state to add $100,000 to the reward fund, bringing the total to $169,000 to catch a killer. Parts of West Baltimore have looked like a war zone as police search for the person who shot and killed one of their own, Detective Sean Suitor, as he and his partner were investigating a murder on notoriously violent Bennett Place.
We will find the person responsible for this ridiculous, absurd, unnecessary loss of life.
Children walked to school next to crime tape as an army of cadets flooded the scene. And as the hours passed, people came here to pay their respects.
It's just devastating. It's really devastating. We're here to pray. We're here to give comfort to the neighbors. We're here to give hope.
The frightening encounter happened just before sundown Thursday. Police aren't sure whether the gunman said anything to Detective Suitor before shooting him in the head and running off.
We have investigative leads right now, and we're following those leads very, very diligently. We know that this occurred in what's now a vacant space in between two row homes. There's evidence that's available to us right now that suggests that the suspect may have been wounded.
Suitor is the first officer shot and killed in the line of duty in Baltimore in a decade. Mayor Pugh.
Violence in the city is out of control.
With federal agents assisting and a reward soaring to more than $100,000, the commissioner had this message for the killer.
Do the right thing. Call 911. Go to a hospital. Go to a church. Go anywhere. Turn yourself in.
Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who worked in Maryland with Suitor on cases, is gaining attention for comments he made tonight. He says if crime is out of control in Baltimore, it's because people failed to control it. He went on to say authorities lost confidence in their ability to manage public safety, which is the most important function of government.
If that's the most important function of government, Baltimore has failed to maintain public safety for many decades now. Justine, I don't know when the last time you had a chance to look at footage back from when Sean Suitor was initially killed. What do you take away from seeing that initial clip and the ways in which Kevin Davis, the police commissioner at the time, was responding to media reporters there on the scene, and the way the story was being framed to begin with? Notoriously violent Bennett Place. Like, oh my God, take it down a notch, WJZ, simmer down.
Yeah, well, what I see there in contrast to what I know is that I see the production of narrative and right away, I see and they do this all the time, Kevin Davis in particular really wanted to use this, and he did in a lot of his statements, to make his position propaganda that, the police are, that people are at war with the police, that the police are the vulnerable heroes in the city. And so it was a production not unlike some of what happened when the Baltimore riots started. That's what I see, because I know that they had video evidence of what happened. I know that they had a witness who's Bomenka lying to them behind the scenes. And my understanding around that time is that once they started locking down Harlem Park, which was right away, and locked down the whole neighborhood, they were going into cover-up mode. But the other thing that's going on is that the feds showed up, and he's not saying that, but the feds were all over the place, also trying to manage the situation because Sean Suitor was a federal witness.
Indeed, and that's certainly one of the reasons that David Simon presented as why he believes that Suitor took his own life, because he was scheduled to testify literally the very next day as a witness, but not as a target of a federal investigation. Tunde, if you could please pop up, that is going to be A7, because, Justine, you said that the narrative surrounding a potential theory that Suitor killed himself began to emerge rather quickly. And I wanted to take a look at this tweet from David Simon that Justine, as the badass journalist that she is, managed to screen grab. And this is from November 22nd. And if I'm not mistaken, Suitor was killed on the 15th. Is that right, Justine?
Yeah, this was 1 week later exactly. And this is when, yes. And this is when it came out that this is the day that it came out that he was supposed to testify the next day.
Yeah, so in case you guys are not able to read it, let me read this. This tweet from David Simon, November 22nd, 2017. Have waited to say this, and it's by no means definitive, as we don't know all that BPD now does, but if it's a contact wound to the head with no visual of assailant, circumstances are at least suggestive of a great personal tragedy, but not a homicide. Time for BPD to address publicly. Right. I thought that was that's pretty brazen a week into an investigation. And it definitely indicates that Simon may have had police, obviously, contacts on the inside feeding him information, because a lot of this was not being disseminated publicly. What are your thoughts, Justine?
Well, yeah. So right from the beginning, there were people trying to push this as a suicide. There were so many weird ways that the crime scene was described as either a suicide that was disguised to look like a homicide, or a homicide that it was so convoluted the way that people were talking about it, because Simon's theory and the theory of some people in the department that started to emerge was that and this is in the show, was that Suitor like staged a suicide to look like a homicide so that his family could get benefits. So this story was there from very early on. And it was around this time that the department, within the next week, started to pivot a bit. And even Commissioner Davis has always said that he's the homicide guy. He doesn't think it was a suicide. But if you really watch his press conferences and his actions closely, you could see that he was making room for this theory. And then soon after this, the media started to report it as two theories: homicide by stranger, grabbed his gun, or suicide. And then that other theory, that maybe somebody killed him because he was going to testify, the media would dismiss as like what activists think. But they were really framing these two theories as that there was plenty of evidence for both and that the department was going to solve it. And here's what I know about BPD. BPD likes to frame these oppositions. They did it with Freddie Gray too. Like, it happened in the van. We don't know if it was purposeful or an accident. Well, no, actually they killed him, at one of the stops. So this was all a production. The two theories was a production. There was a lot of stuff that they knew already, and we can get into it. But one of the first things that caught my notice that seemed very sketchy and unreliable was the ballistics around the fact that he was shot with his own weapon. That was questionable to me.
Get into it, because there's a lot of foolery around this, and what what David Simon is, I guess, hanging his shingle on is this known physical evidence that he claimed, recorded video that he claimed, and civilian interviews. So where shall we begin? where shall we begin?
The big ones for me are the ballistics and the video and audio evidence. So I'll start with the ballistics, okay? So when they locked down Harlem Park on they were going through that entire vacant lot, like scouring it, crime scene people, feds for days, right? And then all of a sudden, on Monday morning, after 4 days of this local news station, WBAL, just happens to be allowed past the cordons to film the lot. And there's like 3 homicide detectives, literally homicide detectives, digging in the dirt. And then they have a moment on camera where they're like, aha. And then the WBAL reporter tweets out like, is this the bullet? So they staged this whole bullet discovery. And then Commissioner Davis says, we found something that'll help us solve the case. And 2 days later, he says it's the bullet. So I started to do a little research, I and others, and discovered that, that whole thing was horseshit, because the kind of guns that cops carry, a Glock, can't be ballistically matched to bullets at all. Shell casings, yes. Bullets, no. So this whole scene of these, first of all, homicide detectives in white shirts are not supposed to dig in the dirt. There's crime scene units are supposed to do that. So
and
then after
you said that they were also digging in the dirt without gloves, right? So potentially contaminating any evidence that may have been there, contaminating it immediately. But yes, hence lending credence to your theory about the production from the police that was coordinated with the media.
It was so embarrassing. And so then this is right. And so, it's a joke, it's humiliating. And these homicide detectives being like, aha, let's call the crime scene. It's the most embarrassing footage I've ever seen. Yes. So then after that, somebody, a good journalist actually at Fox News asked Davis at the press conference, how are you saying this is the bullet when you can't match these bullets? And by the way, the independent review board that finally declared it a suicide, they knew this too. And so Davis said, oh, okay, well, we used a system of where people are and where things are, crime scene reconstruction. And so I can explain later why that falls apart. And then when the IRB came on in the next year, this independent group, and we could talk about that, they said, well, we just did another test where we found his DNA in the barrel of the gun. And so that must mean he killed himself. So there was just one story after another, one production after another. So the assumption that he was shot with his own weapon has been completely accepted by everybody. And I'm just out here mostly by myself, to be honest, not to be a big crybaby, but like by myself saying, why in the fuck do you people believe that when there's 4 stories about how they matched it? Like, and then why, if it were true, why the hell were they digging in the dirt and like, what the hell, you know? So that's number 1 for me on evidence.
No, continue, because I was going to ask you in terms of the evidence that has been released from this death investigation. We'll play along. We'll call it a death investigation for the moment.
It's a homicide investigation, yeah.
A homicide investigation, absolutely. But because it's still ruled as a homicide, the ballistics reports and those kinds of things were never released to the public. Is that still true?
Right. So what they're doing is they're keeping this case open, and year after year, they come up with a different reason. Like 2 years ago, the new commissioner said, well, we're going to do a small list of tasks and find this missing DNA on the gun. And it's like, you know, I'm checking my watch here. I think it's been 2 years. So they're just keeping it open so that we can't see stuff, you know? But so then, I mean, if you're ready, I could just do the video, because the video for me is like where it's at. You know,
do it. Yes, let's
Okay.
get in. What video?
I'm always shouting about this on Twitter, and people are like, "She's crazy," and also she's not David Simon, so what could she possibly know? But
precisely, but she knows way more than David Simon, which is why, David Simon sometimes has the vim, as Kalichi would say, have the vim for women journalists who can absolutely rebut his shit and bring the receipts to prove it. So let's get into this video, Justine. Get into it. What video are we about to see, and from when are we about to see it?
Okay, well, I don't know if you have it, but there was, I mean, it's
don't.
really hard to watch, but I should have given it to you, but when the IRB did its whole report, so the IRB was like, the whole case was just going on for months and months with like random news reports that turned out to be inaccurate, like sourced by anonymous people. So finally, the next commissioner, D'Souza, like put together this independent review board. And just so you know, like that is not an independent review board. They are paid consultants. And what they do historically is they get paid to handle a difficult case and tell the public whatever the police want them to say. So they've done this with Tyrone West. This guy was choked and by police, and then the independent review board swept in and said, he just was overheated and died. His heart exploded. You know, they do this a lot. And so that's the same board, the same leader. And so when they wrote their report, the video was released, okay? And the video is like of the shooting from very far away. It is very hard to watch, okay? But I mean, the thing is, like, nobody else will deal with the video. Like, journalists won't deal with it. But here's my problem with that. The IRB is telling you what's on that video. I don't want to hear someone tell me what's on it. I could see it for myself. Do you understand? Because it's so hard to watch, journalists are like, well, I don't know what to make of it. I'm going to believe what the police tell me it shows. And so what I did was, I and a couple others, we were like, fuck that. We spent weeks and weeks literally watching it closely. And when you spend enough time with it, you're like, okay, yes, there is Suitor, there is Ballistics. And you just stay with it and stay with it. You can see what's happening. And some of it is more clear than others. But one of the big things, the most clear things that happens on the video, that is not in David Suitor's thing, that is not in the IRB, is that right after the shooting, Ballistics runs across the street, and like within a minute, he just slowly walks back over to the crime scene. He's walking so carefully and slowly that a car drives up the street and he stops it so it can't pass the crime scene, it can't pass the vacant lot. And he sends it back down the other way. And he like double checks, and then he strolls right on over to where Suitor's body's supposed to be. Like, we can't see that part because it's cut off, because the camera doesn't catch the lot, right? But it catches the street outside of it. And so he's over there somewhere real close to that body. And by the way, there does appear to be other people there, which we were told there wasn't. So this got reported in the book that is the We Own the City's based on, and in the IRB report, that Bomenka didn't do that. Like, it's left out. It's 2 minutes of clear as day footage. The most clear footage there is cut out of the narrative that the world is being told.
Is
And
this
it's so,
on the suitorfiles.com?
yeah, yeah.
The
So the reason
suitorfiles.com, everybody. The Suitor Files, SUITERTHE, the suitorfiles.com, if you guys want to check out what Justine is talking about.
So this is like the easiest and most consequential part of the video evidence to talk about. And I just want to talk about how significant it is, because it's not only like, wow, you guys have portrayed Bomenka as this like innocent who was totally scared after the shooting and called 911 and then waited for the other officers to arrive and then crossed over with them to try to save Suitor. And it's like, no, that didn't happen. It does seem like he called 911, but didn't give his name, said he was off duty, walked right on over towards the lot. And why this matters so much, Kim, is because when the other officers arrived 2 minutes later, 2 minutes after he started walking, they had body cameras. And the body cameras are what we know of the crime scene. And the suicide theory is based very, very much on what those body cameras show. Where his body is, his gun under his body. And what I'm saying is, wait a minute, somebody was over there, could have been manipulating that shit, at least one person. So I just don't even know what the suicide theory is based on at this point. Like, that actually happened, and it's on video, and you're going to gaslight me and others? Sorry,
Right.
sorry to go on.
No, it's
and that's
fine.
just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more, you know?
So I want us to listen to the reaction from Sean Suitor's family and from his attorney when the IRB's findings and the report was released, which confirmed or found per their investigation. And maybe we could get into a little bit of what the report contained and what it didn't contain and how well sourced and cited it is or was not. But let's take a look, Tunde. This is going to be A9? Is that where I'm going here? Yeah, actually, yes. No, let's go to A8. Yeah, let's go to A8 first. So this is Sean Suitor's attorney, Jeremy Eldridge, and this was a press conference with Sean Suitor's wife, and I have a separate clip in which we will hear from his wife, Nicole. But I just want us to just look at how adamant his attorney is. Look at the body language, what he's saying. And Justine, I'd like to get your reaction after we check this out. Let's take a look.
Cool.
This investigation that was done by the state police was done with a very tight set of parameters. There were no new witnesses interviewed. There was no testing of any physical evidence. They did not speak with the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. They did not converse with the Office of the State's Attorney for Baltimore City, who's been handling the investigation. They did not speak with me, his attorney. They didn't speak with Nicole Suitor, his wife, Demira, his daughter, or any of his other children. This was rubber stamping the already flawed IRB report. This is not new. We are ready for war. We met with Commissioner Harrison personally in his office with his command staff. We were promised a very specific agenda. We were promised an investigation with clean hands. That is not what we've received.
Justine, and just quickly before we get back into the evidence. So when people hear Sean's attorney talk about the state police report, because there were concurrent investigations happening at the same time, but basically the official investigation was taken out of the hands of Baltimore police and put into the hands of the Maryland State Police, whom, as Mr. Eldridge just said, relied heavily on the information from the Independent Review Board, and he called it rubber stamping. Can you just clear up that chronology for us? Because it's like, wait a minute, how many agencies were investigating this at the same time?
Oh, by the way, they did this with Freddie Gray. They do this all the time. They just pile on investigations to make it all sound like, Like, I don't know, they just pile on. Okay, so the homicide department had the investigation originally, and that's Suitor's colleagues. And actually the lead homicide detective for the case is James Lloyd. He is currently under indictment for kidnapping. So like a very solid case, right? So James Lloyd led this original investigation, but the line between investigation and cover up, it's like very narrow. You know what I mean? They're like investigating, covering up all at the same time. A lot of times what they do to investigate is just like checking stuff off of a list, gathering enough so that if anyone accuses them of not investigating, they can say they did, right? So then that was kind of like hit a standstill where the police were like, well, we've done all we can, which was nothing, but they had some pieces of evidence. They had some interviews and they had that video, some dispatch, right? And so then the IRB came next, actually. And the medical examiner had ruled homicide and was sticking with that. And I don't think those are pure. I think MEs are completely politicized too. But in any case, the IRB came after BPD's investigation. It had like no independence. And also the IRB, like it released all the people they interviewed. They mostly just interviewed all the corrupt leaders of the department, many of whom, by the way, while the IRB was doing their thing, the GTTF trials were happening and people were leaving the department, and the IRB is interviewing those people that are leaving the department because they were named in court as co-conspirators. Like that is what is going on. And so then the IRB had this like suicide finding, but it has no government weight. It's like a recommendation. And by the way, the IRB basically wrote the last part of We Own This City. It's like all based on that report.
Ooh, Jesus. Wait, hold on. Circle back, if you could, to the medical examiner's report, because still Sean Suitor's death is listed as a homicide, despite the findings from the IRB and subsequently what the Maryland State Police released in their investigation about suicide. But I feel as though this medical examiner's determination of homicide is pretty significant in the fact that it is still a homicide 5+ years later.
Yes, according to the government, I wouldn't say that makes it necessary. Listen, that homicide by stranger ruling or theory was also flawed and corrupted. So yes, officially, according to the government, it's a homicide and they're not budging from that. And I can't give you any information on what's gone on inside of that office, to be honest with you. I don't know anything, and the autopsy hasn't been released. But so then we got a new commissioner in 2019. He's been around for the last few years. And so he was like, shit, sorry, he's a Christian, so he wouldn't have said that. But he had to now deal with it, right? And at first he was going to go with suicide, because he asked the state police to reinvest. So now we're on like our third or fourth investigation. By the way, the IRB report thanked James Lloyd, Detective Lloyd, for all of his work in showing them everything. Detective Lloyd, who's been indicted for kidnapping. So, right. So then the state police like did nothing, and they just like rubber stamped the IRB basically. And so, but then the state's attorney's office under Marilyn Mosby, someone in that office was like, wait, I think it's a homicide. And that was political too. So the same thing happened with Freddie Gray. You have like 4 or 5 investigations happening. Each one of them promises independence. None of them are independent. It's just stalling and keeping it closed.
I'm chuckling at the absurdity, please. Don't denote my laughter for not taking the issue at hand very seriously, because this is very serious. But the reason I laugh is to, number one, keep from crying, because Baltimore police are just so dysfunctional and so corrupt and so determined to make sure that they maintain power at all costs, because Baltimore police, but pretty much after the developers and corporations, the police run the city. The mayor does not run the city. The city council does not run the city. The Fraternal Order Police and the Baltimore Police Department they wasn't lying when they named that HBO series. We own the city. No shit. And that is facts. That is big facts. So anything to the contrary, they try to discredit it, undermine what they're saying, particularly aspirational journalists and plucky journalists like Justine Barron. But what was I going to say? God damn, I had a thought and I fucking lost it. Go on. I'm sorry, darling. I cut off your train of thought. I cut off your train of thought and now I feel bad.
No, you're good. You're good. I mean, it's so much. I mean, the only thing I would add right now that is important to me is, for me, there's like two guiding premises in this case for suicide and for other things. And one is that, and for the homicide by stranger theory. So one guiding premise is that he was shot with his own weapon. And I will believe it when I see something convincing, because so far there's just a lot of stories and a dramatized discovery of a bullet that can't be matched. The second is that he ran into that lot before he was shot, like we saw in the TV show, right? And so what that does, when they say he ran out of sight of people like Bomenka and cameras, he was no longer visible when he was shot. What that does is it creates a mystery. So Kim, you remember what they said about Freddie Gray? Like they said he died in the van, there were no people or cameras there.
That's right.
This is what they do. So what I found watching the video, and this part isn't as compelling as the other part I told you, because it's just much harder to watch and less clear, is that there is a lot of evidence that he was actually shot before he ran into that lot. A lot. Like he seems to fall outside of the lot. Another figure seems to run. Bomenka pops out at that time, but so it doesn't look like he looks like he's shot before, and that's just the video. There's also a dispatch call that was released, and it surely sounds like somebody screaming followed by gunshots. Can I verify it? No, but they said that that was his last call, and it happens at the precise second that he collapses while he's still not in the lot. So I believe there's a lot of compelling evidence that he was actually shot in view of people and cameras, but the camera is so obscured, which they also do, as I'm sure you know, with body cameras and everything, that it's very hard to watch that part of it. So I, when I write these things and share them, most people read it and they come back to me with like, wow, no, I don't get a lot of like, I don't think you're right. They watch it, they read it, and they say, I see what you mean. The only people who don't see what I mean are white male journalists, pretty much. Like, to be honest with you.
And that doesn't shock me, because those are the people most likely to have faith in the system. You know what I mean? Like, those are the people that, number one, those are the ones investigating. And part of the IRB, it was mostly white men, save one black man who himself happened to be former Baltimore police. And so it's hard for white people to grasp this sort of shit, because inherently white Americans don't believe that police are capable of doing these things. And that, to me, that mindset was very evident in David Simon's tweets, because he was not able to even fathom that police would assassinate another member of their squad. And I don't see why he wouldn't. Why is that so much of a foreign concept? Police are a gang. David Simon knows police are a gang. What do gangs do to rats? They kill them. Why is this such a difficult thing to embrace? But what is there evidence for suicide, Justine? I mean, and it's hard, as outsiders to imagine this without the benefit of reading autopsy reports and the medical examiner's reports, because those things are simply not available for public consumption. So what is the case or the theory for suicide that Simon liberals are pushing this narrative?
Apparently a close contact wound to the head. So I'll believe that when I see it, and then I can process it and think about it, right? So that is more common with suicide, but somebody could come up behind you and shoot you in the head.
So where is the source for that information? Like, right, where is that came exclusively from the police or in the IRB report? Like, where did that information regarding the close contact wound?
The commissioner didn't even say it. It was never officially announced. There's a lot of leaks. And then the IRB report stated it. But I don't know, because the IRB report, by the way, was like sourcing a lot of information secondhand. Like, they had this whole story about how the emergency room, I mean, it's just all going to sound so ridiculous, Kim, but like how the emergency room mixed up the trajectory of the bullet. And that's when they discovered it was suicide and not homicide. But I interviewed like 4 emergency specialists and they were like, we don't do that, you know? So, but in any case, but that, like, I was like, wow, the IRB included that in the report, but they didn't actually interview anyone from the hospital. So it's all like second and third hand sourcing. So I don't know about the close contact. So there's that, the fact that he was shot with his own weapon, which I've already told you doesn't really seem to hold very well from what we know. And, you know, then there is this like long, complicated story about how he was just so distraught. And it's so absurd because here's the thing. Let me just give you one other detective. Ryan Gwynn testified on the same case that Suitor was going to testify on. Detective Ryan Gwynn admitted to helping Wayne Jenkins plant drugs on that case. Ryan Gwynn was allowed to keep his job teaching for the academy. Why would Suitor have been scared of anything? Do you see what I mean? And
I absolutely see what you mean, because that was part of my thinking too. Him simply, okay, let's say what Simon and others allege, that Suitor was so distraught that he had to testify as a witness against the members of the GTTF, and he was concerned that he could be implicated in some way that would lose him his job. He was an 18-year Baltimore police veteran. Okay, we live, well, not you no more, but in the DC, Baltimore area, ain't nothing but police. Ain't nothing but police agencies, security firms. Anyone who is former law enforcement has no problems getting another job. So I can't, I don't buy that. I never bought that. So the fuck what? He got fired from Baltimore police. If that was in case the case to happen, he could have easily found another job in his field, paying him extremely handsomely. Even if he wasn't a member of law enforcement, there's always jobs in this area for former cops. So miss me with that shit.
Kill himself with 5 kids. I mean, and the story is, you know, they discovered on his computer that he had looked up a funeral home, and it's like, yeah, that's what homicide detectives do. By the way, I wanted to add something.
Please.
I wanted to add something because what makes this case really unique from some of the other, like Freddie Gray that I examined, is that there was just you wouldn't know it, but there was a lot more like strife and disagreement within the department about this, because there were a lot of people who knew him and loved him. I know police and prosecutors who believe that he was killed, if not about GTTF, then just in relation to corruption itself. And so this isn't really about, whereas a case like Freddie Gray, you might be able to say the community thinks this and the police think that. This was just a lot messier inside of the department, you know?
I can imagine.
I mean, when it first happened, like the homicide department was like not down to hear suicide. So then you have someone like David Simon, who has like a few friends in the department and a lot of like old timers and knew the chief or whatever, kind of like swooping in. I shared tweets with you where like he was fighting with a cop on Twitter about something that the cop knew personally. And Simon was like, well, according to this book that my friend wrote, and he doesn't, it's not about cops for him. It's about his friends. You know what I mean? Like his small circle of friends and the reinforcement of power and like money. There's a lot of like money behind this suicide theory. You have to understand this was really the most convenient story for them. I had a retired major once tell me, like when it came to Freddie Gray, they didn't think they were doing wrong by covering up. That is how they see their jobs.
That's disgusting. I am extremely troubled by that. Real quick, KevZ 24/7, thank you so much for your super chat support. And Tunde just let me know that Attorney Eldridge is joining us in the chat. So Attorney Eldridge, thank you so much for joining us and for tuning into this conversation. Tunde, if we could cue up C3. Because Justine, you mentioned Sean Suitor's partner, Bomenka, and obviously Sean had ties to the gun trace task force, and even after
old ties, but yeah,
old ties. But I mean, the you know how police do. Police want to put their shit in every fucking thing. So check this out. This is from WJZ TV, and this is after, I believe, Herschel had been convicted and already sent to prison. He allegedly sent a letter to Baltimore police saying that he had more information about the death and the murder. I'm gonna call it a murder because it's an open homicide, the murder of Sean Suitor. So I want us to take a look and get, Justine, your reaction and what you know about this. Let's check this out.
In order for you to be able to walk down here, we have to be able to ID you. That was the orders I was given.
No, that's not the right one. That's okay. This is from WJZ.
Convicted former Detective Daniel Herschel sent this letter to the Maryland Commission to Restore Trust in Policing, writing, "I would like to share my concerns with the Commission about the Suitor case." Herschel says the month before his arrest in 2017, he was transferred from the GTTF to the citywide shooting unit, along with Mamadou Gondo, who later admitted to protecting a Baltimore heroin operation. The GTTF was an elite gun unit, many of whose members were convicted of robbing citizens, among other crimes. Herschel writes, Suitor would come up and meet with Gondo frequently. I am aware that both Suitor and Gondo were acquaintances with two individuals that resided in the neighborhood of Bennett Place. Bennett Place is where Suitor was found shot 2 years ago. Herschel says he even saw the four meet at police headquarters. After Suitor's death, Herschel says he wrote what he knew in a letter to the Baltimore Police Department, and it was given to his lawyer at the time. Herschel has no idea if it was ever passed on to police, and he's never been contacted about it. He writes, if Gondo was forthcoming with the identity of the two individuals, investigators would have had a lead to persons living in the Bennett Place neighborhood who had contact with Sean Suitor. He wonders if police ever knew about or looked at them, and if they could hold the keys to unlocking the Suitor mystery. And adds this, I want to make it clear, I have no reason to believe Sean Suitor was a dirty cop. Suitor was set to testify in the GTTF investigation the day after his death, and Herschel wonders if Suitor was going to testify against Gondo if he was put in an extremely dangerous situation just being on Bennett Place and having contact with Gondo.
Sean deserves justice!
Suitor's family says he was murdered. Police believe his death is a suicide. But last week, the commissioner told us the case is ongoing.
You know, it's not technically ever closed until the coroner or the medical examiner actually rules.
No response at this point from the Baltimore City Police Department. Herschel went from receiving a Medal of Honor in the department to now serving an 18-year federal prison sentence. He is currently writing these letters without legal representation.
There's a lot there, Justine, but really sort of gut-wrenching to hear the Baltimore Police Commissioner say that this case is just not closed. It's not going to ever be closed. And it's like, wow, a man was murdered in the year 2017 with surveillance cameras all around, with police immediately on the scene, with the scene rather quickly being locked down, and we're still literally looking at a cold case. What is your reaction about the letter that Herschel allegedly sent to Baltimore police with this information about the connection with Gondo and Bennett Place?
Yeah, I don't
or
know.
how valid do you think that reporting is?
Yeah.
Let me start there. How accurate and or valid do you find that reporting, and what are your thoughts?
I can't say, like, period. But I do have my own leads have been like leading me to look at what goes on Bennett Place, some other murders around that area. I think one important thing about the Suitor case, and this might be related to what Herschel wrote, is that, you know, in David Simon's stupid TV show, he's driving in a car with Bomenka, who, by the way, didn't look like that. He was wearing like this long tan snazzy jacket. But in any case, they're driving in the car and Suitor's like, let's go find Mary. I mean, Suitor really cribbed all of this from the IRB report. So I investigated this Mary story. The police said they were there on Suitor's case. So for the suicide theory to work, Suitor was dragging Bomenka there to plan his suicide, right? But that's not the facts. The facts are that they were there investigating Bomenka's case, which is the murder of Jeffrey Quick. And so I also have been looking at Jeffrey Quick, the person that was accused of his murder. He was murdered. And there's like a series of murders around there that I think may have some clue into what happened to Suitor, in my view. Like, it's too much to get into. That may be what Herschel's talking about. Gondo and Suitor, I have honestly no idea. So that probably made no sense, right?
No, I mean, it's okay if you don't know, because how can anyone know with all the opaqueness and deliberate misdirections, right? That they have intentionally tried to send people, reporters, the public, Sean Suitor's family, in all kinds of directions. It is truly like a chaos operation, which has been this investigation into his death. So
right, but just to clarify, like, I do think that the media has dropped the ball by not investigating everything going on. Like, there's a gang in Bennett Place, and I would bet police are embedded. So that may be it. Like, they were there on Bomenka's case. Bomenka's case was falling apart. Like, I would be looking there if I had a whole news outlet,
Yeah. So
I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense, Justine. But what I find really irresponsible about the way that we own this city wrapped, and the way that, again, they chose to cover the murder of Sean Suitor, because clearly it was part of the plot line, right? It was the intention to bring his story and his involvement, however big or small it was, with the gun trace task force back in the day, to bring it up to his eventual murder. And for David Simon, a person, a creative, a journalist, allegedly, a journalist, allegedly, to have gone out on this plank, to walk this firm line, like this was definitively suicide. And all the reasons listed that you have on the SuitorFiles.com, and for reasons that you've given here today, I'm still having a very difficult time grasping how he and others can arrive at that, just absent fully believing wholesale, without question, everything that the police and police related agencies and groups like the IRB presented. It's like, you have nothing to validate this aside what you have already been fed. And you've only been fed part of the story because you can't independently verify ballistics reports, autopsies, medical examiners, etc. Like, for him to say that there's recorded video and interviews with civilians, by the way, this civilians interviewed apparently did not include Sean Suitor's family, and known physical evidence, it just seems really thin for a so-called journalist of his caliber. It's fucking strange.
Yeah, when I try to list evidence, the stuff I've been talking to you about with David Simon online, and I've done it a few times, I don't really care about his response, mostly to show other people. And I constantly get people DMing me, right? But his response to me was like, he ignored all the questions. He said they were all bullshit. Okay. And
what questions were you asking him? I'm just curious. Like, what questions did you...
like, what do you make of Bomenka crossing the crime scene? What do you make of the bullet? Like, all the stuff I've been talking about and more. And then he says to me, like, he said over and over again to me, like, well, what do you think happened to him? And it's like, wait a second. I know what happened to that man. How would I know what happened to that man? But it's like, that's where he's not a journalist, because he doesn't think I'm a journalist unless I make up a story. Do you see what I mean?
I do.
Simon is very stuck on a few thoughts about Baltimore police. He's been stuck on them for years, that everything went bad because Mosby charged the officers and they withdrew, that Sean Suitor killed himself. He's obsessed with 3 or 4 thoughts, and he got them all into the show. God bless him for achieving that really lame artistic ambition. Sorry, I could just go on all night.
Listen, there was so much that on Black Power Media on the Remix Morning Show, because I almost feel as though Dr. Jared Ball bullied me into watching this goddamn series, because it was not my intention to watch it for reasons, particularly David Simon, how problematic he can be generally. I do respect his art. I'm not going to even sit here in front like he can't write. The motherfucker can write. He can write dialogue. He can tell a story, but it's the framing of his story, particularly around the way police engage in our communities and the way that his stories have this theme around rogue police versus good cops. And if we have enough good cops checking the bad cops, then the system is still working, right?
Right.
Then we don't have to abandon the system. We can just reform the system, which, you know, Justine, makes me want to fucking shake the shit out of people. Like, the system cannot be reformed.
Yeah.
Stop saying that stupid shit, you stupid fucking liberal. But hold on. But so having also reported upon the gun trace task force, what is your takeaway from we own this city and the way that the GTTF was portrayed and written by David Simon and the like?
I have 2 points. I'll keep it short. You're going to be happy.
Keep it long, girl.
In real life, the feds weren't the heroes here. In real life, it's much more complicated. The feds did whatever they could to control the damage because this shit landed on their wiretaps and suddenly they had a mess on their hands. 2, that show does not tell the story of Harlem Park, the lockdown that you and I talked about earlier. Justin Fenton's book that the show is based on does not tell the story of Harlem Park.
What?
Now that story, right. Well, that book also doesn't include a lot of important things. That story of the citizens of Baltimore, and by the way, I've also written on my website about another man, Alan Johnson, who was like hunted down as a result of the Sean Suitor manhunt and is still in prison. A long story. But the effect of this manhunt and this like crisis on the Black citizens of Baltimore has been erased from the narrative. It comes to you and me on this internet site to try to recover it. So fuck them. Because that was the worst thing. And everyone was complicit in that. Federal, suicide, homicide cops, everybody was complicit in locking people down because they were desperate to come up with a story for this Suitor's thing.
Well, let me bring everybody up to speed because Justine, the excellent segue there, because as you said, We Own the City did not address the lockdown. And again, you guys saw it in the package towards the top of the show where you heard the reporter, it looks like a war zone in West Baltimore. You got the ghetto birds circling in the air, police everywhere, and it was literally martial law. I mean, I don't think that's hyperbole for the residents of Harlem Park. And the ACLU of Maryland got involved. 4 residents of Harlem Park sued the Baltimore City Police Department and were victorious. But let's check out the video. It's going to be, yeah, you already know, Tunde. It's C4, and this is a video produced by the ACLU of Maryland, and what it features is some of the body cam footage that they were able to obtain during those 6 days that the Harlem Park neighborhood was literally locked the fuck down because police was searching for a motherfucker that did not exist, apparently, because nobody ended up being arrested in all of this, right? But these people had their civil rights, constitutional rights completely violated by Baltimore police. And it wasn't until the lawsuit played out that the Baltimore City Police finally issued an apology to the residents of Harlem Park. But let's take a look at the ACLU obtained body cam from Baltimore police when they had the neighborhood locked down.
In order for you to be able to walk down here, we have to be able to ID you. That was the orders I was given.
I got it. You live on this block?
Right there.
Let me see your ID and contact stuff.
I don't have my ID.
You can't go in there.
My house is
You
right
cannot
there.
go in there without no ID.
I just took my daughter to school.
Where your ID at?
I don't have an ID. I just took my daughter to school.
You got mail or anything to say you live here?
My house is right here. If you want me to put the key in and let it see
Calm
that.
down. I'm doing my job, man.
I understand that. I wouldn't have my ID early this morning.
You supposed to.
No, I don't. Not early in the morning. I took my daughter to school.
Ma'am, just show me something that you live here, please.
See? The door unlocked.
Okay, that don't mean anything. I just
It does mean something. It means I live here.
All right.
Wait a minute.
Thank you, man. Have a nice day.
Oh, you on your way to? West Franklin, you got your ID? Which part of West Franklin? Which part? You got your ID?
Okay, how long have you lived there?
Last 5 months.
Let me see your ID.
Okay, I'm gonna give you an FI.
based on the interaction that we have. Since you have no ID, this documentation you're going to use when you're coming in and out, okay?
It's not a requirement like by law or anything that you need to carry one of these. It's just that it's when you come up, you'll already have a piece of paper that an officer has taken down your information, ran your information, and then you'll have an actual piece of paper that every time you come and go, depending, I'm not even know how long we're going to be here.
Do you stay here sometimes? Do you? Yeah. You live here? This is where you live? Huh? This is where you live, or you just come by? No. This is your casa? She told me you were coming, but you still gotta get your information, all right?
Contacts. I'm like, yeah, I know this guy my name. I was like, you got a contact receipt? He's like, nah. I just been writing the fucking contacts and fucking running them real quick. Right, so he said make sure you get the information. You know what I'm saying? I've just been giving them contacts and running them through pocket cop. So he said leave the contacts in there. Maybe it go to the warrant task force. They run them later. And then come back out here, you know what I'm saying?
Anybody that enters a crime scene has to be identified. Where are you coming from?
It's the crime scene.
Where are you coming from?
That video produced by ACLU of Maryland. Martin Hernandez, thank you so much for your super chat support. Tunde, can we get C5 and then C6? So as I mentioned, the ACLU of Maryland represented some residents of the Harlem Park neighborhood, and they were victorious. The settlement details announced by the Harlem Park lockdown case. This went to federal court, if I'm not mistaken, Justine. And from that ACLU press release, it says 4 residents of Baltimore's Harlem Park neighborhood who filed a federal court lawsuit against the Baltimore City Police Department, the BPD, and former Commissioner Kevin Davis, charging that the state and federal constitutional rights were violated during a 6-day multi-block lockdown of their neighborhood following the death of Detective Sean Suitor. It was announced today that they have settled their lawsuit, and the city has issued a rare public apology. And the Baltimore police basically have agreed to a set of circumstances that basically they promise never to do this again. And it's like, you motherfuckers. A lot of people pointed this out, Justine, and I'm sure this is not lost on you either, but they would have never did that in Roland Park. They would have never, ever subjected the white neighborhood, the wealthy white neighborhood of Roland Park to that type of intrusive police occupation, as Courtney the Stallion so astutely put it in the chat. That was an occupying force of that neighborhood, and it was really shameful for David Simon to exclude that from we own this city. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts there, Justine?
Yeah, when they talk about where you're in the crime scene. Okay, so Suitor was shot allegedly in or around this like very small vacant lot. You've seen it, right? And they locked down like 10 blocks in every direction, 5 to 10 blocks in every direction. What crime scene is that big?
Right. So what crime scene is that big? Excellent.
Listen,
point.
I'm willing to believe that there were people inside the feds or inside BPD that were doing some measure of investigating during that time. That happens anyway. You don't need to lock down a whole neighborhood. But I also really feel like they regarded Harlem Park as a place where they could solve, by which I mean figure out how to narrate for the public the Suitor case. And so when they discovered that bullet that I told you about, like, aha, let's call the crime scene with the cameras rolling. That's when Commissioner Davis said, now we can free the people of Harlem Park. We have evidence. It made no sense. It was, they were able to keep reporters and people out that gave a shit, is basically, while they did their bullshit media game. It's all a media game.
Absolutely, you are absolutely right as a media game, and well, maybe I'm sure you do know this, Justine. But anyway, part of the editorial philosophy here at Burn It Down with Kim Brown is that, well, cops ain't shit, and the department has a history of lying. Pick a department, any department, but especially the Baltimore Police Department, and any story, any narrative that involves police misconduct, brutality, and or murder, you can guarantee the very first presentation of facts or events will be absolute bullshit coming from the cops. And that is really without exception. And tragically, we have been reminded of this with the events coming out of Uvalde, Texas, and the absolute deplorable way in which the police behaved there. But again, from small town to big city like Baltimore, this is the police playbook. They terrorize communities, in my opinion, are not beyond murdering their own in order to cover up a situation. And this is all unsurprising in what they do. But Justine, I so deeply appreciate you being with us for over an hour, and I'm going to turn you loose, but I want you to please leave us with some final thoughts. Like, what are some things that people absolutely need to know about the death of Sean Suitor, about the ways in which Sean Suitor's death has been covered, and what could possibly be next in this investigation? Or is your opinion it's all said and done now?
I have grumblings here and there from the trauma staff that treated Sean Suitor. I think for the third time, I heard that there are whistleblowers in that department that want to come out. So that could be interesting if the wounds are not as we were told, because we were told a lot of different things. I think the important thing is that the IRB was hired for a purpose, to rule suicide. It created a very faulty narrative that even a lot of cops I know that believe it was a suicide don't think that report was good. And then David Simon, rather than use his artistry, create character and dialogue, just like curbed all of the dialogue from the IRB report. And so this is not exactly answering your question, but like, these police consultants wrote "We Own This City." And that is just, I'm embarrassed for them, for Simon. I'm like, I pity the guy, and that's why he spends all day cursing at people, because he didn't write his show. I'm an asshole, but
hey, he probably didn't write a lot of his journalistic.
That was like,
listen, he probably didn't write a lot of his journalistic pieces either. A lot of it was probably quoted directly from Baltimore police conferences and the press release from Baltimore police. We have a suspect. David Simon for the Baltimore Sun. We have a suspect. Oh, okay. I got you, bro. No worries. Justine, I'm going to turn you loose because I have some words for Mr. Simon, and I don't want you to be a part of this. I think you've done enough here today. I think you've done plenty here today, and I don't want to sully you by this cussing of David Simon that I'm about to let loose. So I want to thank you guys so much. We have been joined by Justine Barron. She is a journalist and writer. Please go to her website for more of her diligent reporting. Literally, since Sean Suitor was murdered in 2017, Justine has been writing about this and bringing different perspectives and asking questions about evidence that clearly a lot of these mainstream reporters just simply refuse to do. It's the Suitor Files, TheSuiterFiles.com. Justine, you fucking rock, sis. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Okay,
appreciate it. See you, bye. You guys, we love Justine Barron around these parts because Justine is super smart, and her Freddie Gray reporting is actually rather outstanding. And I've always had a lot of respect for Justine, really, when I was first introduced to her when she was reporting on the murder of Freddie Gray. And the fact that she went to Sandtown and walked around and talked to people, which, let me tell you guys, a lot of reporters in Baltimore are afraid to go into the chateau and actually talk to people. Or people who live in these communities are summarily dismissed, not relied as thought as not being credible for a variety of reasons, basically racism. So I have always respected Justine Barron for her commitment and dedication to the truth and not being afraid to go out there, find it, and then report it. So let me say this real quick. Let me get on here and I'm gonna let y'all go because this is going to be really, really brief. If you could pop up that tweet from David Simon Tunde where he called me, he take me for idiot. He said, take me for idiot. On Twitter, guys, David Simon has a reputation for being extremely prickly. As Justine said, it's really kind of curious why the fuck he's such a grump, because bitch, you're rich, bitch. And he has a lot of influence and people look up to him and people all on his dick day and night. So why is David Simon so mad when he gets confronted with things? Well, it kind of depends on who the person is doing the confronting, right? And as a number of Black women reporters, particularly from the Baltimore area, have clocked that David Simon refuses to engage specifically with Black women asking questions about these Suitor findings, right? About his assertion that Sean Suitor committed suicide. And let me count myself in this, because I assure you, you see that tweet after he called me idiot, he blocked me right after that. He blocked my good sis, Taya Graham, today from the Police Accountability Report. He has blocked Lisa Snowden from the Baltimore Beat. He has blocked Keisha, media watchdog, who I just started following as a result of this Twitter kerfuffle with David Simon. And this is what my takeaway is from that. It doesn't shock me that David Simon, instead of engaging, because by the way, my tweet to him, I did not call him a name. The most insult I gave to him, in my opinion, was I said, go medal for your mental gymnastics in just wholly accepting the police accounting of what happened to Sean Suitor, and he got big mad. And you guys have been with me long enough to see that on occasion, white men with big platforms will come at me fucking sideways. And I find it very interesting and telling that David Simon now finds himself in the same company as Tucker Carlson and Matt Walsh. And you guys can imagine, from my little Black lady, disabled lady perspective, that is unsurprising to me, right? Because at the end of the day, white liberals and white conservatives are pretty much blossoms of the same branch. Yes, they just may be on different ends of the branch, but they on the same fucking branch, which is why the only white people I ever want to hear from are the white radicals, because that is the people that I know are with the shits. White liberals are not with the shits. We definitely know white conservatives are not with the shits as it relates to Black people being free, having our equal share of this nation and our rights and all the things that we know that we deserve because our ancestors have paid for it in blood. Okay. But the fact that David Simon seems to think that he's not a propagandist. I'm sorry. What? Just really quick here, guys. And just let me give you guys some quick shit. Let's go to this is going to be the IRB people, guys. So David Simon, again, won't tell us specifically from what evidence he's relying on. Again, he's in the tweet he said to me, he referenced civilian interviews. He also referenced known physical evidence and recorded video as the evidence he's using to justify why he's saying Sean Suitor's death is a suicide. And a lot of that so-called evidence was sourced from the Independent Review Board. Let's take a quick look, if we could, at the members of the Independent Review Board. Today, I'm gonna go through these kind of quickly. So B1, guys, Independent Review Board from Baltimore, Gary Childs. Now look at Gary. Gary looks like David Simon's kind of people, does he not? Well, turns out that Gary's law enforcement career spanned 46 years. He began his career with the Baltimore City Police Department in January of 1972. Can you fucking imagine how off the hook BPD was in 1972? Killing niggas daily, I'm sure. Retiring 22 years later in 1994 as a detective sergeant in the homicide unit. And during that time, he supervised and or investigated over 450 murder investigations. The next member of the Independent Review Board is Dr. James Chip Coldren. Now, Chip is the director for the Center or for Justice Research and Innovation, and also works for the C&A Corporation. Basically, Chip is a consultant, a justice consultant, a justice research consultant. I wonder what Chip's fee was to be part of this independent review board. The next one is going to be Rick Fuentes. Rick Fuentes, if you take a look at Rick there, and if you look in the back of Rick at the press conference Rick was at, Rick is, he just retired 45 years from the New Jersey State Police. That is Chris Christie standing behind Rick Fuentes. The next one, guys, Peter Modafferi. Peter Modafferi, also part of the Independent Review Board, spent 44 years with the Rockland District Attorney's Office up there in New York, 30 of those years as the chief of detective. Next one, Charles Sheeler, as he's listed in the Independent Review Board's report as Charlie Sheeler. Now, Charlie's not a cop, but Charlie's a former prosecutor, and he used to work for the U.S. Attorney's Office. Next one, James Chip Stewart. Chip, another Chips. Damn, how many fucking Chips did they find on this one board? Chip spent 47 years with the Oakland Police Department. And the last and final member, whose picture I do not have, but I am 95% sure that he was a black man. His name is Marvin Sidnor, and Marvin himself was former Baltimore police homicide detective as well. My point being, this is the report in which David Simon is pushing his chips on. These are the folks who David Simon finds credible. He doesn't find Justine Barron credible. He doesn't have them to answer questions from myself or Taya Graham or Lisa Snowden about what evidence he's referring on of to arrive at this suicide conclusion for Detective Suitor that now is immortalized in an HBO series. And we know how fucking stupid Americans are. People who see some shit on TV, oh, that's how it happened. That's exactly how it happened. And really quick, so the Independent Review Board basically had their report about Sean Suitor's alleged suicide rubber stamped by the Maryland State Police. And that's another thing that David Simon referenced on Twitter at a different point, where he talked about the state police investigation. And let me tell y'all really quickly about the Maryland State Police. C1 there, brother Tunde. Oh, this was back in 2008. Landmark decision reached with the ACLU regarding a federal lawsuit filed by the ACLU 10 years prior in 1998 on behalf of the Maryland NAACP and several individual plaintiffs, charging that the Maryland State Police troopers were continuing to engage in racial profiling based on accumulated evidence showing a pattern in practice of discrimination. Okay, and we go to C2 there, brother Tunde. C2. Black troopers, this is from this year. I'm sorry, that might have been 2021. Last year, black troopers alleged discrimination in Maryland State Police. Now, if I wanted to go down every single instance of racial bias and discrimination from the Maryland State Police, I would be here a long fucking time. But I raised those two examples to y'all to show that the department has a history of lying. The department has a history of lying, and the department has a history of racial bias. So why in the fuck would someone like David Simon base his conclusions on the findings of demonstrable institutions that have bias historically against black people? And please don't think that because Sean Suitor was a cop, he was immune from being black. Understand, as I said earlier, the police operate as a gang. Baltimore police absolutely operate as a gang. And make no mistake, this department is fully capable of murdering one of its own and covering it up in real time for all of us to see. And that is what I believe happened to Sean Suitor. I think that Sean Suitor was set up to be murdered by members of the Baltimore Police Department. Do I have anything to substantiate that? No. But let me tell you this. That is the pervasive belief throughout the black community in Baltimore City. And please look at the long track record of black communities that have been terrorized by police being right about shit that perhaps maybe sounded crazy at the start. The CIA is bringing crack into the community. The CIA is running guns. This police officer is serial raping people, serial killing people, right? These are all things that absolutely have happened in Black communities historically. Black people were disbelieved. Black people were gaslit. And that's what I think David Simon is doing. He's using his position and his stature as a very lauded and influential white man in the city of Baltimore to discredit the Suitor family, to discredit the statements of Mr. Suitor's attorney. It's just telling that David Simon would take the word of these people, the Maryland State Police and a so-called independent review board full of cops, rather than listen to the Black ass people who knew Sean Suitor and saw him every fucking day. And that is my point about white liberals being elevated into positions where they feel free to speak about issues that primarily affect Black people, and they are taken as credible. David Simon should not be taken as a credible person regarding race or policing because he believes the fucking cops. He believes the cops chapter and verse, and he had the audacity to call me an idiot. He called me an idiot. Sir, you were up here quoting these racist ass police and police agencies, but I'm the idiot. My guy, please kindly go check yourself, David Simon. David Simon, you are not down. I'm so sorry brothers ever taught you the proper dap handshake because you have overstepped your bounds many times. You have used the N-word on Twitter, calling Sean Hannity, hey, my nigga, and Black people had to pull you up on that shit too, Holmes. You are not down. And the fact that you come at Black women specifically with a very certain ire and energy tells me everything that I need to know about you. But that's okay because guess what? It's always them whom later on it will be like, oh, the sisters, damn sisters, y'all was right about him. Y'all was right about him. Okay, well, we will be right. And if we got to be right in the future, that's fine. But you can suck out. You can suck it out. And gang, that's it. I'm it. I'm gone. Let me go. So join us tomorrow morning on the Remix Morning Show, 8 a.m. on Black Power Media. I want to thank again Justine Barron for her time, for her diligent reporting. Please go to Justine's website, thesuitorfiles.com. Get caught up on the information that David Simon won't tell you about the murder of Sean Suitor, that Baltimore police will not tell you about the murder of Sean Suitor. There have been independent journalists out here doing this work. Justine is one of them, and she has done an outstanding, amazing job, and I'm very grateful to her, and I'm grateful to you all as well. Thank you all for stopping by. We will see y'all back. Watch the space because I'm not sure if we're having a Friday show. We will probably have a show on Thursdays since we have a scheduling conflict. So be looking for the community post on the YouTube channel and we'll let you know when the show, the second show this week is definitely going to be. So guys, don't forget COVID and monkeypox apparently is out here jumping on people. So please wear your mask inside, wash your hands, social distance. Please treat the shit as if we are still in a pandemic. On behalf of Tunde and Molly, we love you guys to pieces. We'll see y'all later. Bye-bye. Thank you, Fire Fam. Thank you, guys.